Welcome to Chris's Bread. Today we're going to learn how to make no knead bread. How exciting is that? There's no knead. We're not going to put it on a flat surface kneading and creating gluten. So this is another different technique how to make sourdough bread is rest and fold technique. Measure your mature starter, fresh starter, and put it in water and dissolve it, and then add the salt and the flour. We're going to mix the flour just enough that all the dry ingredients incorporated with the wet ingredients, no more than that. This recipe takes longer fermentation time, which is easy to work around your schedule, hopefully, because making sourdough bread takes a long time, but this bread recipe, hopefully we'll be able to use it to make a fresh bread first thing in the morning or around your dinner time. So we're gonna mix it just enough, all the ingredients incorporated, and then we're gonna be covering it and letting it rest. So the rest time can be different. It could be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, up to hour. It's perfectly fine. And then we're gonna let it rest, and then we're gonna fold and stretch and fold. So there's no right and wrong way to stretch and fold. I'm just grabbing everything at once and folding it. Make sure wet your hand really well because this is kind of high hydration bread. The dough is gonna be very sticky, so wet your hand really well. You notice that it's not stretching that much. It's gonna be lumpy and texture's not gonna be not that elastic in the beginning. And we're gonna cover it and let it rest another 15-20 minutes. On the second time, you notice that it's gonna stretch a little more, and dough is gonna be consistency is gonna be nice and same consistency. And now you can see it's a little more stretchable, a little more workable. And this is another way you stretch and fold. You just pull and shake a little bit and bring it folded. So that could be another way too. So the longer fermentation time depends on your room temperature and it depends on your starter's strength. It can take in warmer temperature, maybe it's 7-8 hours, might be double. And colder temperatures can take 10 to 12 hours. So I'm gonna let it rest in room temperature. This is in the evening, and then I'm gonna shape it in the morning. So here's the morning. It's doubled or maybe tripled. So we're gonna stretch and fold again. Make sure wet your hand really well. Wet hand. And we're gonna separate the dough from the bowl. Go round and round. If you remember from my previous tutorials that the longer fermentation time allows sourdough bacteria, the bacillus bacteria, to break down those maltose or glucose in the bread dough, and also the gluten will soak up and very stretchable, and it's going to also help the phytic acid to neutralize, and lactose acid, acetic acid will break down all the ingredients and make this flour nutrients available for our stomach to digest. So all those good things happen during the long fermentation period. So this is a win-win. And then you stretch. You just gently shake it if you want, and keep turning and stretch. Make sure repeat this process twice every 20 minutes. Repeat twice. And here we go. stretch and fold, stretch and fold. And it's gonna come all at one giant big elastic ball. I just forgot to repeat this process. I was doing other bread, so I just, my first fold and stretch, I shaped it and put it in container. So you can put it in a banneton mixture, generously flour, because this is wet dough. You don't want to stick your dough in a banneton just before you put in oven. We're gonna let it rest another hour in a fridge. We're gonna cover it up. So I'm using a similar size container, putting parchment paper and let it rise. So I'm just gonna transfer in my hot cast iron. This is wet dough, very wet dough, and might become flat like a pancake. Do not worry about it. It will rise in the oven. I decided to half of the dough, I'm gonna sprinkle caraway seed. I love caraway seed. And then half, I'm just gonna put a rice flour. Because it's a wet, somewhat wet dough, it's gonna be challenging when you score. You can dip your scoring knife in a water or oil or flour, dry flour. I'm dipping in a dry flour to score this bread. And kind of swift, quick motion to score the bread. Otherwise, the dough will stick to your knife and it's not gonna be pretty. But however you manage to score, it's perfectly fine. End result, it's gonna be beautiful because dough is so forgiving. So do not worry about it if you didn't have a good scoring, perfectly fine. Just a quick motion will help you. And we're gonna bake it in a 500 Fahrenheit, covered 20 to 25 minutes, and uncovered, take the cover off and bake another 15 to 20 minutes. You just look at it and decide what color you want. If it's looking a little lighter color and you want a little deeper color, you can bake it another few minutes, perfectly fine. Here goes in the oven. And if it's too dark for you, then you can lower the temperature, 475 or 450, depends on your oven. You know your own better. And here's, look how it's risen up. Remember, it was nice and flat. It's gone up perfectly fine. Here is beautiful color because it's a long fermentation. There's all this sugar creates this beautiful color. Here is the no knead bread done. We're gonna let it cool down because it's a high hydration. Make sure cool it down completely before you slice it. And make sure you hear the hollow sound. Okay, this is nice and warm bread. I'm gonna let it cool down. Now it's completely cooled down. We're gonna slice this bread. Beautiful color. Crust sounds beautiful. Crunchy crust, and crumb is nice, moist, glossy. It's high hydration bread. All those gluten softens and stretches and traps all those airs created by those acids, and big holes, beautiful. But if you like denser bread, you can add more flour and stretch and fold more airy. And this bread smells so good. This brings memory, so many memories growing up eating a sourdough bread similar like this, high hydration. Smells exactly the same and tastes exactly the same. Wonderful bread. Now you know how to make no-knead sourdough bread. Follow this recipe and enjoy the bread. Follow my other recipe to make your own sourdough starter and sourdough bread. Happy baking!